Well, I think I'm live. Hopefully I am. Otherwise, I'll be talking to myself, which is kind of strange. But welcome, everyone, to this session. Yet again, my name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the head of the employment law practice at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. And I am here as an employment lawyer to answer your questions, to make sure that you have answers to the problems that you're facing. If you're dealing with a workplace issue, now is the time, now is the place for you to ask your questions. So I know I'm live, you're live. This session is for you. Type in your question, I'll see it and I'll answer it. I'm here for the next 30 minutes just for that. Now, before I start answering your questions, let me give you some other contact information. To connect with me or my team off social media, easy to do. All you do is you go to employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. You see the address at the bottom of the screen. That's going to give you my phone number, my email address, fax number, forms you can submit if you want. It's also going to allow you to find out a lot more information about employment law and workplace rights. I know there's a lot of questions about vaccines, mandatory vaccines, being let go, being suspended, put on a layoff. All those questions I will answer right now. If I don't get to you, please don't go away. Don't forget about it. Don't just assume that your problem is going to resolve on its own. Connect with me afterwards with employmentlawyer.ca. So again, my name is Lior Samfiru. I'm answering your questions. I'm going to start right now. Type in your question. Next question from, first question from Vaughn on Facebook. If I'm forced to get tested twice a week for my job and there is a cost to the test, who is responsible for paying for these tests, the employee or the employer? Generally speaking, the employer is responsible. And the reason for that is if your employer imposes that cost on you, that's a significant change to the terms of employment, meaning you can treat that as a termination, constructive dismissal. So you can't stop your employer from doing that, but if your employer says you're paying for it, that could be a constructive dismissal. You can treat that as a termination of employment and require your employer to pay you severance. So that's what happens, because that's if your employer is imposing mandatory testing, they should be the ones paying for it. Next question from Go Vegan. So I see Go Vegan has a question about unionized employees. Let me make a general statement about unionized employees. Unfortunately, everything we talk about today only applies to non-union employees. The reason for that is the union is the only one allowed to help a unionized employee. They're the only ones. Many of you are going to say, well, the union is not helping me. The union agrees with my employer. Well, despite that, there's nothing that you can do outside of the union. You can file a complaint against the union with the labor board, but beyond that, there's nothing that you can do. So any question you have about the union, I'm going to direct you back to the union, because that's simply how the law works. So really, we're here to talk about the rights of non-unionized employees. Let's see. So next question. So I see some union questions. I'm not going to answer them because, as I said, I just addressed that. Next question is from Michael on Facebook. I was told if no shot, I could not go to work. I took a layoff. Is this legal? And if not, can or will I get retro? So you can choose, Michael, to treat the layoff as a termination of employment. Assuming you're not unionized, you can choose to say, by putting me on a layoff, you've terminated my employment, and now you have to pay me severance. So you have two options, Michael. Option number one, you stay on layoff and see what happens. And you wait, maybe you go back to work, maybe not. Or you can choose to say, no, now I am treating that layoff as a termination of my employment. You have to pay me severance, and I'm moving on to a different job. You have that right if you've been put on a layoff, whether it's because of the vaccine or for any other reason, okay? Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I'm not missing here. Next question is from Vaughn. If I'm on short-term disability and let's say it lasts up to 6 months, can the employer require I get vaccinated to keep my job in that time, or will they have to wait until I'm off leave? Again, I want you not to think in terms of can my employer. I want you to think of will my employer, and what can I do about it? So your employer may not be able to do that, but it doesn't matter. If they do that, you have the option to say yes or no. If you say no, you may lose your job. There will be legal consequences if they let you go. they'll have to pay severance and potentially human rights damages. So I can't answer whether your employer is going to do it. I can tell you that if they do, you can't prevent it, but you can get damages. That's where I come in if you're in a situation where your job status, your employment status has changed. Okay, next question from Frank on Facebook. My work does not believe in wearing masks and are not listening to me that they have to wear them. So first of all, I want you to put it in writing. Send an email to your employer saying, I'm very concerned. I know we're required to wear masks and you're not doing it. Let's see what they respond. If they don't respond or nothing changes, you're allowed to engage in what's called a work refusal. Because your employer is not keeping your workplace safe, you can say, I'm refusing to work. They then have to call in an inspector from the Ministry of Labor who's going to kick them in the pants because they're supposed to have masking. So that's what your options are. You should not be doing anything that's unsafe, and you should not do anything that's not in line with the required safety measures like masking. So let's see. Sean, can you speak to the update from Human Rights not needing to accommodate workers? So the Human Rights Commission issued a statement about accommodation. It doesn't matter. The Human Rights Commission doesn't decide human rights cases. The Human Rights Tribunal decides cases. So it's irrelevant. Do not worry about that. They didn't even consider the real issue here. So it's not something you need to worry about. Next question from Jamie on Facebook. Do I have to declare my status to my employer? Can my employer fire me for not getting vaccinated? Again, ultimately, it's a question of not can they, is a question of will they. If your employer says, if you don't tell us that you're vaccinated, we're letting you go, they will let you go. Okay, well, 100% they will let you go. It will definitely happen. Now, the fact that they let you go means you're going to be owed severance. Potentially, that could be a human rights violation, meaning they owe you human rights damages, but they will let you go. So you have to decide ultimately, Jamie, what's better? Is it better to get the vaccine and keep your job, or not to get the vaccine, lose your job, and then pursue damages? But so I want everyone not to think in terms of, is it legal? Think of in terms of, what can I do about it? That's the right question you should be asking, because the law doesn't stop employers from doing anything. You can't physically go in there and say, you're stopped, you're prevented. The only thing the law can do is, if your employer does something they're not supposed to compensate you by way of money, by way of damages. So it's not about whether it's legal, it's about what can you do about it. So hopefully that answers it, Jamie. Next question from Conrad. Does my employer have ways to determine whether my vaccine passport is valid or forged? What are the legal ramifications of this? I don't know if they can find out if it's forged or not. What I can tell you is, if you forge it and they find out that it's forged, you'll be let go for cause, no severance, no EI. You're going to have you're going to be in a very bad situation. Absolutely don't do that. Do not forge your vaccine passport, period. Next question is from Kim. If I'm not unionized and they place you on an unpaid leave of absence, what are your options? What if they don't even talk to you and they just put you on it? So no, if they put you on a leave of absence, you have two options. Option number one is you accept it and you stay on a leave of absence and you see what happens. Second option is you can consider that leave of absence as a termination of your employment. Again, we call that a constructive dismissal. Your employer doesn't have the right to put you on a leave of absence, meaning you can consider that a termination. So if you've been put on a leave of absence, you can say, you've terminated my employment, now you owe me severance. Kim, if that's what you decide to do, you decide that it's better to pursue severance instead of sitting and waiting, let me know, connect with me, and I'll help you. And again, for Kim and for anyone that wants to connect with me, the best way to do that is through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca, the place to connect with me and get all the contact information. If you lost your job, if you've been laid off, put on a leave of absence, suspended, that is the time to connect with me right away. Again, through employmentlawyer.ca. Vaughn says, if the U.S. government mandates employers to vaccinate employees or fire them, but I'm in Canada, but I work for an American company, can they enforce that on me? No, they cannot. Next question is from Kathy. Our company is stating they'll look at religious exemptions. I'm also thinking about submitting a notice of liability form. If we've been told if we don't follow policy, we don't have an exemption. So first of all, the notice of liability form, this is for Kathy and anyone else, it's a waste of time and a waste of paper. Don't kill trees, okay? It doesn't do anything. It's meaningless. It's not even worth the paper it's written on. Do not bother. Now, in terms of religious exemptions, the best way to increase the chances of getting a religious exemption is if you can get a religious leader in your community, a rabbi, a priest, a minister, a reverend, whoever the right person is in your religious community, to give you a note saying that your belief is a legitimate belief within that religion. If you can get that, that helps a lot. So that's the best way to get a religious exemption. It's going to be very, very, very difficult for people to get religious exemptions. It's not going to be enough, unfortunately, for you to say, well, it's my religious belief. You need something from a religious leader to corroborate that. But keep in mind, regardless of religious exemptions, a requirement for mandatory vaccines may be discriminatory on its own, okay, regardless of any exemptions. Sean is asking about a union. Again, Sean, ultimately, there's nothing you can do other than to file a complaint against the union with the labor board if they don't support you. That is the problem with being unionized. Again, Tracy also has a question about union. I've answered that. Next question is from Sherry. It's a long one. Let's see if I can get through it. I work at healthcare, no union. They changed their policies. If I'm not vaccinated by the end of October, I'm out of a job. They also sent out a letter to the supervisor, but I was able to see it, and it states that if you have a medical or religious exemption, they will try to, then you will be put on an unpaid leave of absence. Okay, and if you have a reaction to the vaccine, the same thing if you can't be accommodated. I'm terrified of the second vaccine. So ultimately, if you're not in BC, what I'm about to say applies in Ontario or Alberta. If you're let go because you don't vaccinate and you're not even given the option to have regular COVID tests, then yes, you're going to be owed severance, potentially other damages as well. In addition, same thing, if you're put on a leave of absence, you can choose to treat that leave of absence as a termination. In BC, it's different. In BC, you can be let go because there's a government mandate in healthcare. Lisa asked, do I have to show proof of vaccines? Again, if your employer is telling you, unless you give me proof, I'm going to let you go, they're going to let you go. In Ontario, at least, it's arguably illegal to demand proof of vaccines, but it doesn't matter because your employer will let you go. Now, again, you will be owed damages if you're let go. Don't get me wrong. But you have to decide, am I willing to lose my job? Okay? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. That's a personal decision. So again, don't think, is it legal? It's assume it happens. What are your options? That's the question. Next question from Eric on YouTube. After being terminated due to being unvaccinated, roughly how long would it take to receive a settlement in court for severance? Same question for employment insurance. The nice thing, Eric, is we don't have to go to court. We can resolve this without it. 99% of cases don't even see the court, okay? Not even close. So we can be able to potentially resolve this in a few weeks, both severance and EI. But you need a good lawyer that knows what he or she is doing. Contact me, Eric, off air. Go through to employmentlawyer.ca. You'll see my phone number there, my email address there. Connect with me. Don't sit on your rights because you're right. In the meantime, you're not going to get payment. You're not going to get EI. So let's get this resolved. Let's make sure that by well before Christmas, you've received both. Okay? So employmentlawyer.ca, Eric. Fancy1 on YouTube says, how do you ask for severance pay? If your employer didn't pay you severance, you're not going to get it unless we get involved. You can't simply say, hey, give me severance. We have to get involved, but that's what we do. That's our job. That's why you have to contact me again through employmentlawyer.ca. Next question is from Marianne on Facebook. I am management. The company policy is vaccinated or put on a 3-month admin, no pay leave, and then let go. They will pay frustration of law, something like 2 days per year of service. What are my options? That's nonsense, okay? If they put you on a leave of absence or they let you go, either one, an employee can choose to treat that as a termination and get full severance. And that severance is not 2 days, It could be as much as 24 months pay. Okay, so for Marianne, and by the way, for everyone, if you want to find out right now, this very moment, how much severance you're owed, here's what you do. You simply go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Grab your smartphone, your tablet, your desktop, go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Use our severance calculator tool, okay? You answer 3 questions, you can find out in seconds how many months of severance you are owed. 6 months, 18 months, 24 months. Easy to use, it's free, it's anonymous. You don't have to put in your name or the company's name or a credit card number or your city, nothing. Just go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. So let's see. Next question is for Tom. If a company implements a vaccination policy stating testing is an alternative, who pays for the tests? So again, as I was saying before, the company should pay for it unless it's, the company should pay for it, because if not, it's a constructive dismissal. And it certainly also should be on company time, okay? So Kevin also had a question about paying. I've just answered that. Linda says that her union told her that she could terminate in order to seek a lawyer. No, she cannot. That's absolutely not true. You cannot tell your union you're off and I'm hiring a lawyer. That's not possible. It has to be the union, and there's no way around that. Let's see. Neil says no sound. I think everyone's hearing me, Neil, so hopefully you've been able to fix your issue there. From Dre on Facebook, my sister works for an eye surgeon. They are not part of a union, I guess. She's being told she is going to be fired with cause, so she can't get EI and no severance. Can they do this? Well, it's only cause if she's refusing to get COVID tests. There's a mandate, again, as long as she's in Ontario or BC, there's a mandate. In Ontario, there's a mandate that says you have to at least agree, if you're in healthcare, to COVID tests. If she refuses, then yes, she can be fired with no severance. If she's in BC, then she does have to have a vaccine if she is working in healthcare. If those situations don't apply to her, they're not giving her the option of COVID tests, or she's not in BC, they cannot fire her without severance. She will be owed severance, but to get it, she's going to have to call me, okay? employmentlawyer.ca. I'll help her. My team will help her get the severance that she's owed. Again, Jamie's asking about a liability form. Talked about that, Jamie. Waste of time, waste of paper. No, don't bother with the liability form. Meaningless. No one's going to read it. No one's going to look at it. It's not going to do anything at all. Next question from Carmel. I have been terminated with cause because I declined testing and vaccine. My employer cites health and safety. Well, you got to call me. No, I'm not even going to give you the option not to call me. You must call me, Carmel, as soon as possible, or go to employmentlawyer.ca. You'll get all the contact information. You see the address right there, phone number, email address. Let's talk about it. Let's get you the compensation that you're owed. Scott says, what if we can't afford a lawyer? Well, I'll only speak for myself and my law firm. Most of our cases are on a contingency basis, so you don't have to worry about affording a lawyer. Carmel says she handed a notice of liability with no effect. As I said, waste of time, waste of paper. No. From Vaughn, if I'm salary and commission based, would I get severance based on my total earning, or is it only salary? Great question. It is total earnings. So your severance is based on your total compensation, salary, commissions, bonus, benefits, pension. All that has to be included as part of your severance. It's not just salary. That's why it's so important to get us involved, so that we can not just get you the right number of months, that the right dollar figure should be included in it, okay? For those joining us, my name is Lior Samfiru. I'm a partner and head of the employment law practice at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP, and I'm here live answering your questions about your workplace rights. I'm going very fast. There's a lot of questions. I'm here for another 10 minutes or so. I'm going to try to get to as many questions as I can. Next question is from Marta. I have officially been placed on an indefinite unpaid leave of absence for refusing to take the vaccine. What are my options? I have reached out to your office, okay, and left a voicemail. We will absolutely call you back. You're entitled to severance, potentially other damages as well. Now, for those that have contacted us, we have a lot of people contacting us. We're a bit behind in getting back to people. We will definitely get back to each person that sent an email, that called us. So hang in there. We will get back to you, I promise. So Marta, we'll call you as soon as we possibly can, and we'll help you. So Fantina says, I'm a dual citizen. My other country does not require vax. Do I have the right to refuse vax? You're exactly, if you work in Canada, you have the same rights, obligations, options, and every other Canadian employee. The fact that you also have another citizenship does not factor in whatsoever. Let's see. From Dan on YouTube, my wife's boss outed her as an unvaxxed to some bankers as to why she couldn't go to a lunch meeting. Does she have recourse? Her medical info not for him to disclose. Absolutely, yes. She could potentially take legal action against him for breach of privacy. If she'd like to do that, she can give me a call. That's absolutely inappropriate. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. Next question is from Darlene on YouTube. What if I'm on a paid disability leave of absence for depression and haven't been vaccinated by the 30th? What happens? Well, you have to ask your employer what happens. You know, what are they going to do about it? Ultimately, if your employer does something like let you go, they may say, we don't care. That's illegal. There's going to be legal consequences. But the first question is to them, what's going to happen with me? I haven't been able to be vaccinated. I've been off on a leave of absence. How am I going to be treated? So ask them. When you know, let's connect again through employmentlawyer.ca. From Sean, do we need to consider retaining a human rights lawyer in addition to an employment lawyer? No, those are the same thing. Next question is from Deborah. Can they also make you take the vaccine if you're fully remote? Again, it's not a question of can they, it's a question of what you do if they do that. So you're right, it doesn't make sense to require a vaccine if you're remote, but if your employer does it anyway, the reality is you will lose your job if you don't do it. But again, damages will be paid. So it's not a question of can they, it's a question of will they. Antonella, I see you posted a question. It's way too long for me to read on this forum. So you're probably better off to just connect with me directly through employmentlawyer.ca. Okay, let's see. Asha asks, what are options as a non-union management in dealing with employer discrimination? How do I get a lawyer? Go to the HR. Well, you're speaking to a lawyer right now. So you connect with me through employmentlawyer.ca. Okay. Let's see, from Sean. Are private employers abusing their authority by enforcing Hospital Directive 6? And again, don't worry about that. I told you what happens if you lose your job in a situation like that. You're owed compensation. How we got there, why we got there, doesn't really matter, okay? So you can drive yourself crazy by trying to figure out all kinds of things. It's actually quite simple, okay? If your employer mandates you get a vaccine when there's no government mandate and lets you go because you don't, severance is owed and potentially human rights damages. That's really all that we can do. So Dwayne asks, if you're placed on an unpaid leave of absence, are you eligible for EI? Well, you're not going to be eligible initially. That's why we're going to have to deal with the matter. Your employer is going to say you're on a leave of absence because of something that you did, and the EI is going to say, no, we're not going to pay you. So that's when we have to get involved and get you severance and also get you a new record of employment so that you could qualify for EI. Let's see. Linda asks on YouTube, in mediation, the employer attempted to bribe me with money so I cannot go to human rights. It's not called a bribe. That's what happens in mediation. We try to settle the case. We offer a compensation, or the employer offers compensation in exchange for a release. It's not a bribe. It's called a settlement. Next question is from James. Do you take your fees for severance after you win, or do you require upfront retainer? The vast majority of our cases are on a contingency basis, meaning we don't charge anything and we only take a percentage if and when we're successful. And even then, we negotiate that your employer pay at least a portion of your legal fees, okay? We understand that our people that are contacting us are in a difficult financial position, and to tell them you have to pay us $20,000 up front makes no sense. That's why we don't do that, okay? Thanks for that question. Let's see. From Cheryl, can I be put on an unpaid leave for not being vaccinated if I'm on a short-term sick leave? Again, the question is not can you, the question is will you? You have to ask your employer, what will they be doing? Once you know, I can help you if they're doing something illegal. If they put you on a leave of absence, that could be a human rights violation. It certainly is something that allows you to get severance. So the question is to your employer, will you be putting me? I can't answer what they will be doing. I can tell you that if they do, you will be owed compensation. Let's see. Darlene asks, is mandate a law? Yes, it is. Let's see. Okay, Julie has another question about unionized employees. We've addressed that. Unfortunately, I can always only direct you back to your union. Cheryl, if I'm terminated for not complying with COVID testing, do I still have a case? You absolutely do, unless there's a mandate, in place saying that you have to agree to test. For example, in healthcare in Ontario, the government of Ontario said either you get a vaccine or you do regular COVID tests. So if you work in healthcare in Ontario and you say, I don't care about the mandate, I'm not going to even agree to COVID tests, then yes, you can be let go with no compensation. There's not going to be much that can be done. If you're not in healthcare and you're let go because you don't agree to COVID tests, then yes, in most cases, you absolutely would be owed compensation. Charisse asked about college students. I'm an employment lawyer, so I'm not going to go into that. I'm talking about the relationship between employee and employer. Kathy asked, why is the notice of liability a waste of time? Because no one's going to read it. No one's going to care about it. It's going to do nothing. Okay, it's a piece of paper. Your employer is going to wrinkle it up and throw it in the garbage. So it makes no sense. No one will ever sign that or even look at it. Let's see. Next question. We have a couple more questions. Let's see. I work from Laura on YouTube. I work for the Alberta Health Services, and I'm facing an unpaid leave of absence in the next couple of weeks if I do not get vaccinated. Do they have the option? Do you have to offer the option of frequent COVID testing as an alternative? So I'm assuming you're not part of a union. If you're part of a union, you have to talk to the union. If they don't offer COVID tests and they let you go, yes, you're owed compensation. It's not about what they have to do. It's about what they will do. If they let you go because you don't get vaccinated, sure. Now, you also may want to suggest to them, say, I'm not comfortable with the vaccine, but how about I agree to regular COVID tests? Your case actually would be stronger if you suggested that to them. Okay. Let's see. Okay, a good question here. I'll take this as the last question today from Dan. Is there any benefit in taking stress leave, at least to buy time? Again, you're part of a union, so I'm not going to answer that specifically for you, but generally speaking, if you're feeling stress, anxiety, etc. right now, talk to your doctor. If your doctor feels that because of that, for medical reasons, you should be off work, then he can give you a doctor's note. The doctor's note doesn't even need to say what the medical condition is. The doctor doesn't have to say it's anxiety or stress. The doctor simply has to say, for medical reasons, this individual can't work. That may be a good solution. That may get you out of the workplace and buy you time. If you have a short-term disability or a long-term disability plan, you can apply for benefits through that plan. So that is not a bad solution. As long as I'm not a doctor. If your doctor feels that you can't be working or shouldn't be working. Guys, thank you very much for all the questions. Again, my name is Lior Samfiru. I'm going to be shutting off social media, but I'm getting back to work, meaning you can contact me now if you want to have a private discussion about your matter through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. You'll see my email address, send me an email, phone number, pick up the phone, call me. It's all there. I'll be back next week My other colleagues will be doing more of these sessions later this week, but don't wait. If you have a question, an issue, a problem, do it now. Contact us through employmentlawyer.ca. Thank you, everyone. I'm Lior Samfiru from Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. Always a pleasure. A lot of great questions today. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.